The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
Hello, welcome to the ServiceNow podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kelly. In today's podcast, I'm delighted to welcome Yves Wullaert. Yves is an enterprise architect at ServiceNow. Yves, great to have you on the show today.
Great, thank you.
So you come from Belgium and come over to Berlin. Tell us a little bit about your journey to now.
Yes, so this was a long time ago. I started in IT in the automotive, and I was starting in, I think it's in 92, 93 in Belgium. And because automotive is much more in Germany. So I moved, first of all, to a Johnson Controls company in the rounds Cologne. So there I moved around in 95, 96. And then later on, because I travel around the world to start up the automotive, my family went back to Belgium. So I commuted a couple of years. And then I brought my family across to Berlin to Bombardier. That's another company I worked for. And then, of course, later on, I started with ServiceNow 4 years ago, 2017. And that's why I stay still in Berlin due to Bombardier. But with ServiceNow, I go to customers. So I can still live in Berlin. Thank you.
And Yves, tell me a little bit about your role in ServiceNow and some of the work that you do.
My role as an enterprise architect, I do for our top customers kind of strategy planning and architecture planning for the digital transformation. That means if the bigger companies have digital transformation plan, what they should do first and how can ServiceNow help in that journey. So step-by-step approach to create a kind of a 3-year roadmap, how they can digitalize their processes, their services, and how can they create a kind of what I call a data set, a kind of configuration, CMDB of their digital assets so that they can automate their processes and bring more intelligence in these processes quicker.
So we were talking in our call before this about like the virtual center. Could you tell us a little bit about the virtual center and what that could involve?
Yeah. If for the bigger customers, we see that automation is a big driver. So there is a lot of task that in the previous, I would call it paper-based time, was done with putting in forms, putting the forms to the back office and the back office typing that in systems. So all these paper-based processes, if we digitalize them, so these things can be done by computers, by programs. And what we see now is that because if you have forms and you structure these forms you can pick up the forms with what I call a kind of robotic process automation and what we call a virtual worker. And the virtual worker has like an employee ID, but of course it's a virtual ID, but he still has an ID, so he can have access to certain systems so that you can track that and log in and so on. And this virtual worker will do processes that other times human was doing, and this was more repetitive work, so that the employees of the company can concentrate more innovation and they can do much more newer business innovation and drive the company forward. And then the dull, repetitive work can be done by a virtual delivery center. And this is this becomes quite promising in the future world, because if you digitalize that and you can free up people to get more innovation, then that digital journey can be accelerated because you can free up the cost of doing this repetitive work and then put that cost in innovation. So then the journey becomes, again, quicker and more.
The roadmap for implementing ServiceNow, you need to be careful to manage expectations because it can be quite challenging if people have got different expectations. And it's quite a big change management process involved within that. And you had a kind of a nice way of detailing that and sharing that journey. Maybe you could let the audience know about.
Yeah, so if you come up with a new technology and you implement your, what I call 20 years, you have the same processes, or what I call here sacred cows, because these sometimes, in some companies, even homegrown CMDBs have been created and they're working 20, 30 years with that. So that means these are, if we're going to replace those systems, these are a very heavy task, because it's like a spider web in their system landscape, and you can't cut this out so easily because it's sticky, and that means is you have to be careful both on the technology side, but as well on the people change management, because people, it's a big change for them, so they have to really sometimes jump in cold water to say, look, this is a new journey. And in the beginning, it doesn't, it's a big change. It doesn't feel, you're not so comfortable. But in then going across to the new software, then of course, it's always like a change manager. A dip in the beginning, it goes a little bit down because it's a big change, but then it picks up because you see the new functionality, the new things that you can do. And then you can go in a kind of a more positive mode. So this is what I see in the journey in the beginning, looking at the complexity and then looking at really what I call the minimal viable product, because you cannot do everything at once. So you need to go in a step-by-step approach with a minimum product and then add it on. So it is then good enough to replace the area. And then you add on with continuous improvement to be fully replacing the old software.
Yves, tell us a little bit about some of the type of customers that you're working with, maybe some problems that they have initially, and then how you go about helping them on that journey to solving them.
Yeah, so if you talk about like big customers, there was like a big service provider, and they had what I call a very old legacy CMD software and old service management software, and we had to replace that. And there was a lot of interfaces, and in the beginning they were afraid because it's like, and they are thinking we are doing here an open heart surgery, and because if you go in the center of the systems and it's a technology company, you need to be very with high quality, otherwise you can disturb a lot of, and it's their business. So if you disturb their business, the revenue will go down as well. So there was a lot of like big people who were afraid, and then we tried to show them in a step-by-step approach that if we do a kind of what I call, you duplicate the database so that you can see the same data in the new system, and then you can show process by process that these processes are also functioning not only quicker, but as well at better quality, then the people are more to move forward. So they had 61 interfaces. So we had to build all these interfaces. And then at a certain moment of time, they even did a connection from because this was a service provider. So they, with our software, they could connect to their customers who had as well ServiceNow. And they did a connection from one ServiceNow to the customer ServiceNow. And that really accelerated as well their business, because then they could directly, you had a B2B between the customer and you, like what we call like e-bonding. And with that idea, we went then to the telco, and now some big telco company in England is also using that same principle of e-bond, but then for another industry, telco. So this is very exciting that you can go from one customer, you have a good idea, and then you can copy best practices to another industry, and the other customer, the new customer, is also happy on the same idea of connecting two instances from the customer for the service provider. So I like that very much, that you can creating best practice in one customer and implement that in another customer.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
Tell us a little bit about the benefits of the change management piece and then some of the outcomes that they can actually get from it?
So first of all, the benefits is, of course, with the automation of it, you can concentrate more on the caring of the customer or the caring of the IT, the caring side to have better experiences, and all your employees get more excited of doing some innovation, new stuff, or bringing more intelligence in there, and not the repetitive stuff. So you have a two. It's like a double impact. One impact is the automation and the cost reduction and the quality increase, because people sometimes make mistakes, and computers, if you do the program, the quality is better. And as well, 24/7 weekends, it's working. So there is no problem there. And then on the other, the creativity and the innovation and the people can be used. So it's a double. So you save the cost in the automation of the repetitive process. And on the other side, you enhance it in doing then new kind of services that you didn't thought of. What is it? Picture recognition, and you combine the recognition of the picture with quality defects and these kind of things. These are new processes that we see now, because the current processes you can automate, then of course, then it becomes more relevant of the top line to get more services and the revenue growth. On the other hand, we see as well on the change management, we have as well in ServiceNow a low-code platform. Before that, IT was a kind of a bottleneck to do some programs, and we see that simple workflows of the service request and a service catalog can be done by the business, and we do a kind of citizen development programs where the business is then not, so they don't have to go and translate it to the IT, so they can on themselves with some easy clicks. If you are a little bit digital savvy, you can with a local program do some workflows. And what we done with our integration hub, if we use systems or we use other systems, we do it once with IT, and we can be reusing that as a modular effect for all the low-code programs. So you don't need to find like an interface to SAP or something. You don't need to create that. So it's available in your UI to do this. And this is also a big benefit and a big adoption rate that we see with our customers, because then the automation is huge because there's a lot of potential. But then the force who's doing this automation is twofold. Not only the IT can then concentrate on the pro code, on the really difficult task, and the easy task can be done by the business itself. And that's then as well a big benefit, what we see in our customers, that this drives more automation and more what I call digital transformation.
Tell us a little bit about sustainability, because there's something really exciting in that, in terms of GPS driving business and workflow for a better world and sustainability for the future. There's so many options available.
Yeah. So, of course, the first thing, if you go from paper-based to electronics, then you save paper and forest. That's the first thing. That's always good. The second thing is if you consolidate data centers and you consolidate energy, then you can also do green. There are now data centers that are more with green energy, so you can have your green footprint, and we can control that. And the third is like every company has ESG goals, and these goals can be tracked, and there can be initiatives on these goals tracked with our platform. So you have as well the norm goal set, and then you have there like project management. We have a kind of a business management within ServiceNow who tracks the standard PPM. So you can use that PPM functionality, project management functionality, to track your initiatives on these ESG goals. Plus that you can even have things including the customer. An example of a big furniture company where you could recycle your furniture. So you have to have channels then where you can make an appointment with the customer to do the recycling. And this kind of appointment makes collaboration with your customer there. Our platform shines because not only we can create that appointment because we communicate on the same platform, but then secondly, we orchestrate the work behind to make it that it's to the right recycling and to the right what we call circular economy. So if you create a kind of ecosystem, and of course, I have a vision, if there would be a lot of companies having ServiceNow, then you interconnect. If the energy company has as well ServiceNow, then they can bring the invoices electronically to the companies and provide them with data around the right energy or CO2 or these kind of things. Plus, on the other hand, if the EU would as well have ServiceNow, and then they have the penalties and the restriction, we can have as well these kind of audit trails and kind of communication, and we can help that as well within to have the sustainability and not pay so much penalties as well. So these are the two value propositions: be sustainable for a better world, and secondly as well, try to know what's out there because it's complex on regulations, so that the regulations are more in digital workflow so that companies can comply better.
I really like those value pieces, and particularly around the audit trails that you can keep track on as well. It's just fantastic to reimagine what's possible with just a different way of looking at things and the thought process that's actually there with it. You've been listening to the Alldus podcast as part of our ServiceNow series. I've been speaking to Yves Wullaert, and Yves is an enterprise architect at ServiceNow. Yves, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.